They came out of transit at 0312 station time, 11 vessels dropping into real space above the ecliptic in a formation so old the pattern had a name in our archives, the Continuance Closure Array. I was already on the platform when it happened. I'd been there since midnight, the way I always was on the anniversaries, watching the dark between the stars with a cup of cold coffee and the particular silence that the upper atmosphere carries at that hour, when the city's heat has not yet begun to rise. The Orveth Continuance. After 47,000 years. I watched their transit signatures bloom on the display inset at my wrist, pale amber diamonds, 11 of them, moving into standard deregistration approach. They were broadcasting on the old registry band. I recognized the frequency because I had spent 31 years of my working life cataloging every frequency the Continuance had ever used. The Planetary Memory Institute existed, in large part, so that someone would still recognize that signal when it came. We had always known it would come. The only question was whether we would be ready. We were ready. The platform I stood on was the observation tier of Vantage Kessler, the uppermost public deck of the Meridian Citadel, 4,000 meters above what had been the coast of Lagos and was now the civic heart of the West African Continuum, a tower complex that housed 11 million people and anchored the defense grid for the entire southern hemisphere. Above me, the pre-dawn sky was the color of deep water, and across it, at intervals I had memorized like the features of a face, the running lights of our orbital platforms burned steady and quiet. They did not look like weapons. They never had. That was the point. I keyed my earpiece. Institute. Oka 4. They're here. The voice that answered was Tomas, my junior archivist, 23 years old and very good at hiding that he was frightened. We have them. 11 hulls. Continuance class. Consistent with the 4,200 cycle administrative registry. They're broadcasting the standard deregistration preamble. Of course they are. I set down the coffee. What's the preamble say? Designating former biosphere registry number 7 Theta Orveth 4419 as confirmed failed. Proceeding with formal closure of file. Requesting confirmation of zero sapient presence. A pause. They think we are dead, Director. They thought that 47,000 years ago too, I said. Pull the counter-filing. Have it queued for transmission on my mark. I heard him breathe. Then, it's queued. Below the platform, the city was beginning to wake. I could see the lights cycling on in the residential tiers, the slow cascade that started at the coast and moved inland as the dawn crept west. 11 million people going about the first minutes of their morning, aware or not aware that 11 ships from the administrative body that had once written their entire species off as an extinction were holding position above their sky. The Orveth ships moved further into approach. I watched them cross the display. They had not changed much in 47,000 years. The Continuance was conservative by nature, which was part of why they were still filing paperwork about a species they'd closed the book on before recorded human history began. Their hulls were the same elongated administrative cruiser design, built for paperwork and enforcement, not for war. They had no reason to bring warships to close a dead world's file. Then our grid woke up. It did not announce itself. It never did. One moment the sky above Vantage Kessler was pre-dawn dark with the running lights of the platforms at their resting stations. The next moment, 94 orbital platforms were fully powered, and the Meridian Citadel's upper array had rotated to track, and the defensive skin of our eastern hemisphere acknowledged the arrival of 11 vessels in its operational sphere and classified them, correctly, as an unregistered foreign force. The compression had given us 47,000 years to build. We had not wasted them. I watched the Orveth formation do something I had read about but never expected to see in person. It stopped. All 11 ships, mid-approach, came to a full halt. In the administrative cruiser doctrine, that was a maneuver reserved for moments when the approach corridor contained something the lead navigator had not been briefed to expect. Something that should not have been there. 94 platforms. Plus the 3-kilometer-long response vessel's holding station on the far side of the moon, which the Orveth had not yet seen. Plus the surface-to-orbit arrays along every continental ridge. Plus the citadels, 9 of them now, on 6 continents, each one a city and a weapon system and a declaration written in steel and mass that said, "We were here, we are here, and we built this while you were not watching." My earpiece crackled. A new channel opened, an outgoing hail from the lead Orveth vessel, directed at coordinates that corresponded to Earth's old signal tower, which had been decommissioned 10,000 years ago and replaced with something considerably more substantial. Former Biosphere 7 Theta Orveth 4419. The voice was mechanical translation, the continuance's standard administrative register, flat and procedural as a tax notice. This is Continuance Closure Vessel Primary, authorized to conduct final deregistration proceedings under Continuance Administrative Code 7.441. We are detecting anomalous orbital infrastructure. Please confirm status. I press the transmit key on my wrist display. Continuance Closure Vessel Primary. This is Director Senar Okafor of the Planetary Memory Institute, authorized representative of the Terran Continuum, speaking from the surface of Earth. I kept my voice level. I had practiced this. We had all practiced this, at the Institute, in the way that you practice a thing you hope you will never have to do and cannot afford to get wrong. We confirm sapient presence. We confirm advanced infrastructure. We confirm operational defense posture. We do not confirm the premises of your closure proceedings. A long silence. Long enough that Tomas, on the Institute channel, said quietly, "Director." "They're processing it," I said. The Orveth lead vessel opened the channel again. "You are claiming sapient habitation of a biosphere that has been under deregistration classification for 47,000 years under Continuance Administrative Code. Code 7.441, yes. I have the code. I also have the counterfiling." I nodded to Tomas on the Institute channel. "Send it." The counterfiling was 140 years in the making. The Planetary Memory Institute had been founded specifically to build it, a species-wide administrative record constructed in the Orveth Continuance's own bureaucratic format, citing their own procedural codes, documenting Earth's unbroken sapient habitation across the full 47,000-year period of our supposed deregistration. Continuity of governance. Continuity of infrastructure development. Continuity of population. The compression had been a choice, not an extinction, a species-wide decision, made in the generations after the Orveth filed their closure notice, to go dark, to stop broadcasting, to let the galaxy believe what it wanted to believe, and to use the silence. The filing was 3 million pages in the Continuance's own document standard. It cited their own precedents. It was stamped with authentication codes derived from the original registry entries they themselves had made 47,000 years ago, before they wrote us off. We had kept those codes. We had kept everything. Another silence. Longer this time. I turned away from the display and looked out through the platform's transparency at the sky that was beginning to lighten in the east. The dawn was coming up over the water in the old warm colors, amber and pale rose and the particular deep blue that preceded the first direct light, and against it, if you knew where to look, you could see the platforms. Not as weapons. As the fact of what we had done with the years we'd been given. My mother had told me, when I was very young, that the compression had not been a quiet decision, that there had been generations who fought it, who argued that going silent was surrender, that building inward was hiding, that humanity deserved to be loud in the galaxy and should demand its place. She told me this without editorializing. She had been a historian, not a soldier, and she understood that most large decisions contain the argument against them somewhere in their core. What those generations had not understood, she said, was that the galaxy's inattention was not an insult. It was a gift, and we had learned to spend it. The Orveth channel opened again. The voice had changed register. The flat administrative tone was present, but underneath it was something that translation could not entirely smooth away. I had spent my career studying the Continuance's communication patterns. What I heard now was a word I would not use aloud, but which, in my professional assessment, corresponded most closely to the human concept of recalculation. Director Okafor. We are reviewing the filed documentation. Take whatever time you need, I said. We have scheduled no military action contingent on this conversation. We are not currently in a posture of offensive engagement. The defense grid you are observing is precisely that, a defense grid. What you filed as a dead world is a living civilization with a documented, unbroken administrative record. Under your own code 7.441, subsection 34, a closure proceeding is void upon confirmation of continuous sapient habitation and infrastructure development. The counterfiling establishes both. You are looking at the infrastructure. The longest silence yet. Then, we will require time to process the counterfiling through continuance administrative review. Of course. I kept my voice even. We will transmit our full current infrastructure registry, population census, and governance continuity documents as supplementary exhibits. We have prepared them in your standard exhibit format. I paused. We have had some time to prepare. I did not say 47,000 years. I did not need to. What followed took 11 hours. I stayed on the platform. I drank 3 more cups of coffee, cold each time, and I watched the sun come fully up over the Lagos coast and burn the morning into a clear blue day, and the city below went through its full morning rhythm, and nobody panicked, because we had been waiting for this longer than modern human civilization had existed, and we had decided, somewhere in those long thousands of years, that we would not greet it with panic. The Orveth Formation held position above the ecliptic. Their scans ran continuously. I could track them on the Institute's monitoring system, watching what they looked at, how long they lingered on each orbital platform, on each citadel, on the shipyard installations at the L4 and L5 points that housed response vessels we had not yet needed to UN berth. They looked at the compression archive transmission we appended to the counterfiling. 47,000 years of internal records, unbroadcast, stored, intact, proving that no generation had forgotten and no generation had stopped building. At 1847 hours, the Continuance lead vessel opened the channel. Director Okafor. Still the formal register. But quieter now, if a translation system could be said to have quiet. The Continuance acknowledges receipt of the counterfiling. Preliminary administrative review confirms the cited precedent under Code 7.441 subsection 34. Closure proceedings are suspended pending full review. Understood, I said. We will be withdrawing to transit distance. Safe transit, I said. I meant it. The 11 ships began to move. I watched them on the wrist display, and I watched them with my own eyes against the evening sky, amber-lit now, the sun going down over the water in the same colors it had always used, and the platform steady against the darkening blue. They moved slowly at first, the careful movement of vessels whose navigators had been briefed for an empty approach corridor and were now moving through something considerably more populated than expected. Then they cleared the outer platform ring and picked up speed, and their transit signatures began to build, and one by one the pale amber diamonds on my display stretched into the brief bright lines that meant fold transit, and then they were gone. The sky was very quiet. Tomos's voice came through the earpiece. They're clear, Director. All 11. Clean transit. Log it, I said. Full record. Time, formation, duration of contact, full transcript, administrative outcome. Yes, Director. A beat. We did it. I looked out at the evening sky over the city, the lights coming on in the residential tiers, the platforms burning steady at their stations, the first stars showing above the coast. 11 million people in this tower alone. 4 billion on the surface. More in the orbitals and the settlements and the installations that the Orveth had spent 11 hours scanning and would spend the next administrative cycle attempting to process. We did it 47,000 years ago, I said. Today we just showed them the paperwork. I stayed on the platform until full dark. It seemed right to stay. The compression had been made by people who would never see this day, who had chosen the silence for their children's children's children across a span of time that made the whole of written human history look like an afternoon. They had built in the dark and kept the records and passed the codes down and trusted that the day would come when someone would be standing somewhere on the surface of the world they had protected, watching the last of the Continuance ships clear the outer platforms, and would understand exactly what had been kept for them. I understood. The stars came out, one by one, the way they always do, the way they did before the Orveth filed their notice and before the compression began and before any of this, when we were small and loud and easy to dismiss. We were none of those things now. We had used the years well. The silence had cost us things I would not list here, things that lived in the deeper archives and were not for casual reading. What it had taken to maintain the compression across 100,000 generations, what had been given up, what had been carried. But we had carried it. The file was closed, and we had closed it ourselves, on terms we had spent 47,000 years drafting, in a format the Orveth could not refuse, citing precedents they had written. That is what a species does, when the galaxy stops watching. It remembers, it prepares, it waits, and then, when the day comes, it handles the paperwork.